So we're opening up the CATIA interface. So by default, CATIA opens up in the assembly design workbench, as you can tell by the word product up here in the feature tree. That's not where I want to start because this is where you go if you have parts and you want to assemble them and can technically design in the product workbench. But it's a lot easier if you go ahead and just close this window out, and we'll go under start and start with either part design or a sketcher, and those work interchangeably together. You have to have a sketch to create your part, but you can start your part and then enter into sketch mode. And then later we'll address the assembly design workbench and the drafting workbench. We'll also look at a little bit more complex features through the generative shape design workbench. I'm going to go ahead and start in part design, and it'll bring open a window down at the bottom that'll allow us to save our name. So for this one, I'm just going to call this interface demo. And it's going to save in the CATIA documents folder, which is not really where I want to look for my parts. So I always go immediately and save as and locate my window through my file explorer where I want to save my file. Okay, now let's explore the part design workbench. So at the top we have a menu bar, and this is where you can go bar that'll allow you to go under start and access your workbenches, file to open or create a new part, save them. Under edit, you're going to be able to undo, repeat, copy, paste, those sort of functionalities. You also have access to your properties through that window. Under View, you'll be able to access your View toolbar, which is also located down here at the bottom. And I should reiterate that the File and Edit menu options are located down here in the bottom in the Standard toolbar. Under Insert, you'll be able to access your features that are available to you on the right side with all these individual toolbars, but you can actually move around, move to the top, where you can bring them back and create like a second column if you wish. So you got a little bit of control with how you arrange your icons, but if you make a big mess and you want to bring them back to the default, you can go under Tools and go to Customize. And then under Toolbars, you can restore all contents and restore those positions. And that'll bring you back to where we were before we moved everything around. Under Tools, you also have Options, which will allow you to do things like set the units or set the grid. You've got these little expanders at the side for your options. So if you go under General, and then Parameters and Measures, and then Units, that's where you'll be able to change this. And if you want to go in inches, you can change under length to inch, but I typically use millimeters as my starting point. So I'm going to place that back in millimeters. While we're in here, let's go ahead and change the grid as well. So underneath Mechanical Design and then Sketcher, we have the grid available to us for editing. So the spacing by default is going to be 100 millimeters in graduations of 10. You know how to change that if you want to. Okay, so with those two settings updated, we're going to go ahead and close out of there. Let's take a quick look over at the right hand side to see our toolbars that we have under part design. So we have Sketcher, which is our access to the Sketcher workbench. We have our sketch-based features, which will allow us to turn our sketch into a 3D object item. Next, we have dress-up features, will allow us to modify our part by making like curved edges or hollowing out the part, things of that nature. And then down at the bottom here, we have the transformation toolbar, which will allow us to do things like make duplicates, do some patterns and things of that nature. Before we move on into the Sketcher workbench, we have our workspace where you'll create your item. In the left-hand side, we have our specification tree, and that's going to be where we have the name of our object. If it's not showing up, you can always go to Properties, right-click, go to Properties, and under Product, you can change the name there. You also have your reference plane, so that's going to be your top, front, and side plane. and then they're referenced in the middle in the plane system, and then as well reiterated in the axis system. So if I wanted to sketch on my front plane, I would select that, and you can see it selecting here. If I wanted to move them around, I could change it with our axis system over here, translating things left and right or rotating them according to the direction there. And then once we have sketches and features, they'll show up underneath the part body, and this serves as like a table of contents for everything that you would potentially need to go back and edit or modify and set those parameters. All right, so in our front plane, we're going to enter into sketch mode, and it's going to convert this into a 2D representation. We've got a couple of movable toolbars that kind of show up here on the side. Our sketch tools, I'm going to dock them at the top so that I can see them a little bit better. I'm going to dock them at the top. So if you look at those, our sketch features are going to be some of the most important ones to focus on before you get started here. Generally, snap to point is going to be turned on automatically, but that's great if you have like increments that follow a grid pattern. Like if you look at those, are 10 millimeters apart, 20 millimeters apart, 50 millimeters apart. But if they're like 17 and 23 and 48, that doesn't really help you at all. So I generally turn those off. Great if you have options for changing your lines into construction elements. And then you also have geometric constraints and dimensional constraints, and those two need to be active. So in order to make turn those icon or tool you have active, options you would click on it and it'll changing your lines into construction elements. You definitely want these to be active. Otherwise, your constraints that you add will be temporary, and those two they won't hold when you make additional constraints. So it's really important to turn on both your geometric and your dimensional constraints. In order to make a icon or select into another icon, and it'll turn on. Simply right click. Active. You definitely want these to be active, and it'll be active. Otherwise, your constraints. Then once you set something temporary, and it won't deselect. So if you want to select it and make it active and hold, you'll just double click, and it'll remain until you escape. To select into another. So on the right hand side here, we have a couple of toolbars that you'll use to create your sketches. The profile toolbar here has all of your you have the profile that you can create so if you want to of your own shape and make it active. And we have some predefined ones. Just double click, and then down at the bottom we have the operations toolbar, which will allow you to make some modifications. So on the right hand side here, we have a couple of toolbars that you have to have create at least a part of your sketch created before you can use here has all any of the operations toolbars. You have same thing with the constraints toolbar. You have to have a part of your sketch created before you can make predefined ones here as well. But the constraints are going to allow you to make distances and then set locations for your sketch. Once you're done with your sketch, we'll simply exit the workbench, be back over into part design mode where we can convert those into 3D objects. So that's a little tour of the interface. Hopefully it gets you a little bit more comfortable with using CATIA, and we'll get into sketching in the next video.